Finally feel like myself again. Okay, so I'm signed back into my account as James Will Webb 2, and now I am ready to go ahead and issue a ruling on the pull request that Dan has sent me. All right, so if I look over on the right-hand side over here of my repo, I can see that pull requests now have a 1 beside it. And if I click on this, I can see the one pull request here has been sent by Dan about 6 minutes ago. Added terms and definitions to the glossary page. These can be added to the master branch. Yeah, okay, fine. Let's take a look at it. So when I click on this, it takes me directly into the pull request itself. Now, I got to be honest with you. This assails your eyes with information, all right? It's a lot simpler than what you give it credit for. There's so much going on here. Notice what it says. It's a nice little summary here. Dan wants to merge one commit into master from glossary. So, okay, right off the bat, I get a summary, okay? I could open up issues on this if I wanted to. I could say, hey, we need to really all talk about this before I commit this pull request, and I could open up that as an issue. I could edit the title of this if I didn't think it was a great title. You could also have a conversation about this. So he just said added terms and definitions to the glossary page. So that was what the message that Dan gave as he submitted it. I could come back in and write him a respond like, oh, now's not the time. You know, we need to wait on this. Keep this pull request open. I might revisit this next week. It's really up to me. Now, again, I can search and look at the commits that were made. I can take a look at the files that were changed, that sort of thing. And then I can go back to the conversation itself. Now, if you're ready to go, if you think this is great, notice it says you can also merge branches on the command line because that's really all this is doing, is it is going to take one branch and merge it into another one. It is no different than what we were doing earlier in the last chapter in the GitHub client. This is just happening on the actual GitHub webpage itself. Now, again, you can check this branch out in GitHub for Mac if you wanted to see this locally. For example, I don't have this branch local to my machine. Dan created it on his and then pushed it up, and I don't have that local branch. So maybe I want to examine this in more detail before I say, okay, I could check the branch out, and it would pull it down locally, and then I could sort of play around with it locally to determine whether or not that was something I wanted to do. But it's a pretty quick and easy change. I think it's going to be great. So I'm just going to type in merge pull request. Now, when I do that, it wants me to pass in a little note here. It self-populates with what it had before, merge glossary changes in master. And I could say something like, good work, Dan. And I can go ahead and confirm that merge. Now, as soon as I do that, it says, okay, you successfully merged and closed that particular pull request. So it merged those two branches together. The master branch now has those changes. And if I don't need that branch anymore, which in this case I don't because its work is done, I can go ahead and delete the branch from my remote repository. All right, now if I go back to my main repository, I can see, if I scroll down, you can see added terms to glossaries right here, 22 minutes ago. Ooh, let me refresh that. 23 minutes ago. Well, there you go. Well, that was when the pull request was sent. I get it. It shows you when the last commit, because it just pulled that commit in, and that was made 23 minutes ago. Silly me. All right, so the pull request was just made, but that commit was made a while back. You'll notice when I go to branches now that the glossary branch is not a part of that because we deleted that. And now our master branch has those changes merged into it. So, you know, the real trick to collaborating inside of GitHub repository with team members is coming up with a workflow that suits you. A lot of people like to use what they call a centralized workflow. That is, you own the repository, you don't add any collaborators to it, and all of your collaborators have to then fork the repo and work on it locally. A lot of other people prefer the workflow that I showed you guys here, which was you have one repository that everybody has read and write access to. In that situation, when you have collaborators that can read and write to the repo, you need to have very, very clear terms for how commits are made, pull requests are made, issues are tracked, that sort of thing, so that you don't end up with a lot of mess or changes that are unexpected to everybody within the team.